Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game SO Terragon series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, more specifically the work-in-progress Sega Saturn Core. Because after a little bit of a lull, SRG320 is back with not one but two recent core updates, bringing us improvements to game, sound compatibility, and many other awesome updates. And we're going to be taking a look at the most current Sega Saturn Core, which released about 48 hours ago as of the recording of this video. Before I get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But we're starting off with Power Slave, and this is a game that pretty much everyone and their uncle requests another test of. And outside of this video, in a week or so, I will have a full long-term 12-minute test of Power Slave, going over just how good it is on the core, because this is one of the best Sega Saturn games of all time, and honestly one of the best classic first-person shooter games of all time. Last time we talked about this game, there was a lot of lighting models missing, and there was also some issues where the sound would get a little bit corrupted or kind of sound like it was clipping the channels. Here today on the current Sega Saturn Core, if there's anything wrong with Power Slave, I can't find it in the footage and gameplay. If this is your favorite game of all time and you played it 100 times, if you see anything you don't like, leave me a comment down below. But now with the full lighting model in, now with the sound being accurate, this just plays exactly like if I pop my copy of Power Slave in my Sega Saturn. And that's all we really want out of the core, is a one-to-one indistinguishable experience between real hardware and something like an FPGA core. And as you'll see here throughout the gameplay, this is just such a pretty game for Sega Saturn. Lobotomy Software were absolute magicians when it came to getting the Sega Saturn to do things that pretty much no other developer, including Sega, could do, and the engine that they developed for this game just absolutely works so well on Saturn hardware. All of the camera sway, all of the motion, all of the effects look so good here in the core. If you do notice a slowdown here and there, that is inherent to the original game on real hardware as well. And yes, Power Slave has been recently-ish remastered, but honestly the Saturn version is still my favorite. And you'll see here is that Anubis Man throws those fireballs down the hallway, that blue glow reflects accurately off of the walls. And that was one of the most impressive things about Power Slave back when it came out, the pseudo real-time lighting model where different explosions and gunshots would actually light up the environment around you. You'll see one right there as well. So if you're wondering sometimes why we're just shooting the wall or random objects, it's to showcase those little effects. And last time we took a look at this game, they really weren't baked in whatsoever, which kind of made the game still fun, but honestly a lot of the dramatic atmospheric lighting in Power Slave is really why you play it. So if you want to play Power Slave today, you're going to have a good time. Now moving on to other games that have seen vast improvements since we last talked about them, Asuka 120 is going to be another awesome experience. This is another really fun 2D fighting game on Sega Saturn, a console known for having awesome 2D fighting games, and it definitely is one of the deeper cuts on the platform. Everyone's going to think about the Capcom 2D fighters when they think about fighting games on Saturn, but honestly this one is a ton of fun as well. And the last time we showed it, there was definitely a lot of issues in the sprites. There was lines through the sprite strips, and sometimes they would not align. So I'm trying to visit some of the games we talked about months ago or even last year to show you just how far the core has progressed since these games were tested last. And again, if there's something you haven't seen tested recently that you want to see on the channel, do leave me a comment down below and I will definitely try to loop back around on it, because this core has gone through so many iterations. There's hundreds upon hundreds of games we've tested, and some of them we haven't tested for 6 months to a year. So again, if you want to see something, let me know. But you'll see here from all of the action, all of the backgrounds, all of the sprite work and effects, everything just looks like real Sega Saturn hardware, including that dithered shadow on the ground there. It is exactly where it should be, and it does have that nice dithering look to it. And that was the thing about Saturn, you'd see a lot of dither patterns compared to something like True Transparencies on PlayStation 1, and while technically it's not as impressive, it is one of those things that's inherently the Sega Saturn look, and people do look for it. And the sound has definitely improved since the last time we watched this game as well, so go ahead and listen for 45 seconds and I'll be back with more games that have seen vast improvements. Sounds awesome to my ear, and if there's anything wrong with the audio, I can't tell, but as I say in pretty much every video, I am not an audiophile, I am purely in the visual medium, so a lot of you out there who have a better ear than I do, mine's kind of made out of tin, sometimes hear things I don't, and that is useful for testing, so if there's anything off about that sound sample, please do tell me about it down below. But you'll see here all of the gameplay footage. I could have just told you this was on real Sega Saturn hardware, and I think it would basically pass muster. There's nothing in the image, nothing in the gameplay, nothing in the responsiveness that makes me think this is anything other than a real Sega Saturn, and that is always something that is spectacular to see. Now let's move on to a game that I can't even remember if we've tested, and if we have, it was definitely very early in the Core's life cycle, and that is Loaded. If you ever played anything like Hotline Miami or something like Smash TV, you're gonna know what Loaded is. It is an isometric game with sprites and 3D elements combined together on the screen, and it is absolutely 100% balls to the walls, action-packed in all of the best ways possible. And this is one of those games, if you played it back in the day, you probably remember it and love it, and if you didn't play it, you probably never actually checked it out before, because this is one that gets some acclaim from some people, but others just basically completely bypass it, which is always surprising to me, because this is just a ton of fun. Yes, it's an absolutely mindless shooter where all you need to do is move around the arenas and levels and kill absolutely everything in front of you, but I kind of love just how simple the game truly is, just exactly like something like Smash TV, where your only goal is to kill or be killed and make sure you wreak as much carnage as you possibly can. And that was definitely a pun to say this is also very similar to something like Total Carnage, and this is just one of those classically quintessential North American Sega Saturn games in my opinion. And this again has a really fun pseudo real-time lighting model, as well as some really good zooming in and out, and it is just one of those games that has an absolutely unique vibe and is not going to be mistaken for any other game on the Sega Saturn. And the performance here, as far as I can tell, is exactly what I would expect. And if you want to see a long-term 10 to 12 minute testing video just unloaded, leave me a comment down below, because I do have all of the footage. I'm just trying to see whether or not I actually want to voice it over. But again, this is just one of those games that is so much fun, and as you see it here performing on the Saturn Core, nothing visually stands out whatsoever that makes me think that there's any issues with VDP1 or VDP2. And if you do notice a little bit of slowdown here and there, that's also again inherent into the real Sega Saturn hardware, because this game, while not the most visually impressive thing in the world, stylistically yes, as far as the polygon count no, it pushes a lot of different sprites and action on screen at once, so sometimes in some of these rooms you will dip a few frames, and that is just how the game is coded, because this was still the era of 3D and game performance, where something like a stable 30 or 60 frames per second just wasn't really the goal. So long as you weren't in the low teens, people were totally accepting of that. And I know if you were around when PlayStation 1, Saturn, and Nintendo 64 were on store shelves, sometimes people think the slowdown is a problem with the core, when in reality that's just how things worked back in the 90s. So this again seems to be adhering exactly as you would expect it to, and that's always awesome to see. Now let's move on to another game that you have not seen on this testing series in probably over a year, and that is Hot-Blooded Family. It has a Japanese title which I would totally mispronounce, so I'm going with the English translation. Interestingly enough, for a 2D game, this is actually a title in which the PlayStation 1 version is probably the better, more superior version. But as far as testing Sega Saturn games, it's nice to go from something running in 3D to running in 2D, because this is a very pretty game, and it's a ton of fun as far as a beat 'em up is concerned, and I feel like it's one that most people probably haven't played before. So leave me a comment down below and you tell me, have you ever played Hot-Blooded Family and what did you think? But the last time we showcased this game, I went back into the archives, it would definitely freeze and hang, and there was a lot of corruption in the backgrounds and sprites. Something about VDP1 or VDP2 just was not working within the code. And that again is just how long we've been doing this testing series, almost up to 2 years at this point in time. It's been so much fun to follow the progress, and it's great to loop back on games that I would consider not playable a year ago, and now tell you that if there's anything wrong, I cannot detect it whatsoever. And big thanks to Andy D for helping with the footage as well this week. And this is just a title, again, it is so fun to play, and you'll see here those two street lights in that dithering pattern look so good on the core. And last time I don't even think this game actually had sound. Now it sounds perfect, so go ahead and listen for 30 seconds. I'll be back with one more game to show you. Just such an awesome soundtrack, and it's so charming, and this game, more than anything else, just has such a weird sense of whimsy and wonder to it. We are fighting inside of a whale, then we get blown through the blowhole to fight on top of a whale, while we actually take on these squids with boxing gloves. They kind of look like they have the Slim Jim logo on the side. Sure, I don't think that's Macho Man Squid Savage trying to hawk you guys some Slim Jims, but it could be, and we're just not quite sure about that. But all jokes aside, again, Hot Blooded Family is just the type of game that you can start up on your MiSTer FPGA today and play. Now do be aware, the core that I'm playing this on is not the update all core. These most recent test cores are limited just to the MiSTer FPGA Discord under the test channels channel. There's a lot of channels, but that's where you're going to find it. So if you're expecting these fixes and changes, you do need to be manually installing these cores, but honestly it is just drag and drop. And I know we talked about KO Flying Squadron, people seem to have a difference in opinion on how to pronounce it. And apparently the pitch in some of the sound effects was not 100% accurate to the original hardware when I showcased this game. So now if you go ahead and you just play on the most recent core, the slight pitches have been changed, so now it should be 1-to-1 with exactly what you expect. And that's what I love about these testing videos. I have not played this game in maybe a year or two, and somebody out there was able to tell that the pitch on the sound effects was off. Maybe it's because they played this game every 3 months because it's their favorite. Maybe they just have a really good memory and a great ear to be able to hear these things, because that is how granular these improvements and changes get. The slight pitch variance to a sound effect when you're collecting something in a game can be inaccurate, and SRG320 is reading those notes, going back in and making small tweaks to certain games in the core to make sure that they are 1-to-1 accurate with real Sega Saturn hardware. And that's the current situation with the current core. The fixes keep coming, the changes keep coming in. There's a lot of improvements here on the core. Yeah, we're still missing stuff like light gun support, and some games still have bugs, but honestly this feels really mature for a core, and I can't wait to see what the next one brings. And if you have any requests for testing, leave them down below. Next time there's a new core, I'll do another video, and expect some long-term tests soon. Bye bye.